Hello everyone. Incidentally, I've taken my glasses off to stop those annoying reflections, not out of vanity. Everyone knows I wear glasses, and so I'm not hiding that fact. Okay, so this is not a puppet show, and it's not an anecdote about misunderstandings. This is my first real serious video diary, blog, whatever you want to call it, since I returned to Ukraine and volunteered to help in her efforts to protect her sovereignty and protect her citizens. Okay, let's get the word volunteer out of the way for a start. Volunteer in my case does not mean I have come here, gone to local army barracks, grabbed a uniform and an AK-47 and intend to storm off to Donbass to fight the enemy. Although if they come to Kremenchuk, I will definitely fight, and I know how to do that, as my security friends know full well. Alright, there are many ways you can help Ukraine as a volunteer, and the way I've chosen is to, as I did during the Maidan demonstrations, all the way through that. In fact, as I did as far back as the Euro 2012 competition, and that is to try and get the truth myself and diffuse it around the world to dispel a lot of the terrible rumours that go around about this horrible country full of horrible people. And well, you know the rest. If you watch the Russian news, you think we're eating babies here or something, which we're not. Okay, so that's one thing I do on a daily basis. The other thing I do is to, on behalf of a charity here, which is called in English Come Back Alive, to source and try and finagle for free equipment for our soldiers fighting at the front. Now, when I say equipment, we're not talking about offensive equipment, because obviously Ukraine needs that, but I'm not in the business of trying to find sniper scopes, which are offensive. You don't use a sniper scope to do anything but snipe people with, so that's killing people. No, I'm looking at more mundane items, which the critics say, well, the army and the government should supply, such as socks and warm clothing for winter. Well, yes, perhaps they should, but we won't go into what happened to all the money in the past, because that is the past. What people have got to understand is that there's been a general mobilisation here, so you're talking, I don't know the exact figures, but you can be talking 1 million men suddenly find themselves in uniform or not. And unfortunately this crisis has gone on so long, we're now into winter, and it's already been very cold here. It's very mild today, but it's forecast to be a very cold winter, and I think most of us will agree it's going to be one of these very cold winters. Which is fine if you're just like me, tootling around around the town taking photographs and talking to people, but it's not fine when you're stuck in a trench for days on end in sub-zero temperatures, not able to move around for obvious reasons, or move around very much, and then it becomes more of an enemy than the enemy, if we like to look at it that way. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm examining all sorts of other ways to help. And I have many ideas. One of them is this blog, which, apart from informing my friends what the idiot David is up to now, is also intended, again, to diffuse the truth about the situation here. Right, let's leave that aside for a moment. As I say, I'm in Kremenchuk, incidentally, because I have Ukrainian family here. And without going into that story, I do have Ukrainian family here, including a wife. And whatever our present situation is, they are my family. I believe in family, and I believe in my moral duty as head of that family to be on hand to help in any way I can to protect them. Were the Russian army to come to Kremenchuk, well, yes, I would pick up a gun and fight them. But I believe that danger has receded somewhat. Let's go on to what today, December the 9th, is as far as the Ukrainian government is concerned. The President has declared this as a day of silence, which doesn't mean we have all walked around with a sticky plaster on our mouth, not talking. He means it in the context that he has instructed the armed forces of Ukraine to stop shooting. And unless something has happened in the last few minutes, that appears to have happened. Donetsk airport it's a little bit confused what is happening there at the moment. But to stop shooting and start talking, basically, and he invited the rebels. I'm not going to call them pro-Russian separatists because I believe that many of them, in fact we know that many of them aren't, they're actually Russians, to Minsk to talk about a proper ceasefire again, which would include all the things that were thrashed out in September about a corridor where no heavy weapons would be, etc., etc. Well, what has happened there, I don't know. The President is in Singapore today, and that doesn't indicate a lack of interest, but there's not just the President running this country, and quite frankly, unless the opposition, we'll put them as the opposition, decide to go there, he will have egg on his face just arriving there to an empty conference room. Now, Mr. Vladimir Putin, the President of Russia, has suggested that these talks be held on Friday for whatever reason, and that he would support those talks. Now, we're going to go into the realms of my opinion, okay, of what is happening. There's been apart from, as I say, Donetsk airport, which is a terrible situation, it's been pretty quiet in most other areas, despite the fact that there are very large numbers of, we believe, regular Russian troops, plus unknown but very large numbers of tanks and rocket launchers, etc., etc., moving into and moved into position in Donbass, obviously into the opposition's positions. And then nothing. Now, initially I thought, well, perhaps Mr. Putin is waiting to see the results of the Moldovan general election, but that has come and passed, and still nothing has happened. I frankly believe that, given the parlous state of the Russian economy, through mainly sanctions perhaps, but pretty bad state, and exacerbated by the fact that the price of oil has just completely tanked to somewhere around, I haven't looked today, but something like $70, and where the Russian economy actually needs $100+ a barrel to balance its books. Okay, they have the sovereign fund, but my goodness, they have been eating into that just to fund this what is undoubtedly a proxy war. And cracks are beginning to appear in the dam over there, and people are starting to question why Russia should be fighting Ukraine, either directly or by proxy, because frankly it's a surprise and no one here can understand it. You've got to understand that there are a large number of people, a very large number of people here who have families consisting of a Russian grandfather, a Ukrainian mother, and vice versa. People have relatives in Russia. I mean, this we're talking about mother and daughter, which with Ukraine is the mother, incidentally. Cousins, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and people are starting to question why this is happening. All right, so if you're someone of Mr. Putin's ilk, who has had this plan, I believe, for many years, perhaps as long as 5 or 6 years, even more, to reinvent or take back what he considers is Russian property. A little aside there, Russia itself, the Soviet Union ceased to exist so it couldn't do anything, has never actually formally given Ukraine independence. I'm not saying that that is the reason they're doing this, but it's just a little aside. 1997 was when Ukraine declared independence from the Soviet Union before then, but in 1997 it actually declared independence from Russia. There's two separate entities really. Okay, so faced with all of this, and then I'm not happy to see fighting or bombs or anything anywhere, but then Chechnya popped its head up again, and in quite a serious way. So Mr. Putin is faced with problems of an economic nature, unrest in what has been a very restive republic, with now a puppet government anyway, semi-autonomous, whatever you want to call it, and the price of oil, bearing in mind that Russia's economy is based on energy and very little else, okay, and the resolve, which I don't think he quite believed would happen, of basically the rest of the world, especially the United States and Europe, prepared to accept, especially Europe, quite some punishment for doing so, but the sanctions, the strength of the sanctions, which will get worse if this continues much longer. Chancellor Merkel has made that quite clear. I think Mr. Hollande has made that quite clear. About everyone's made it quite clear that Russia has to stop, otherwise things can get even stickier for them. I have to applaud France for cancelling the 2 Mistral-class helicopter assault ships. They're actually assault motherships, which are offensive vessels. They're not defensive. You don't need a ship that can carry landing craft and helicopters and a battalion of troops to defend your own territory. The only use for it is to actually go and attack someone. So, well done, France, and I'm especially glad because I have French blood through my father. Okay, so now he's got all of this stacked against him, but this is not a man who's going to admit he's wrong or made a mistake. So I think these talks, these ceasefire talks, are an ideal opportunity for him to cast himself as a great peacemaker and arbitrator, and then quietly, or not quietly, whichever he wants to do, get all of his troops, regular troops, and the mercenaries that they're undoubtedly paying, such as the Chechens. Well, the Chechens might decide that there's a better fight in Chechnya, so God help Russia if they do. Okay, and get out of there. Now, that's my opinion. I don't know what your opinions are, and I'm sure they differ to mine, but that's how I take the situation. So I'm going to end there, and thank you for your time. I will try to keep up this video diary as things happen. It may be daily, but I don't think it's necessary at the moment. And the old term, it'll all be over by Christmas, I think is a little optimistic, but my gut feeling is there will be a ceasefire this time. Luhansk has already negotiated one, and as far as I know, again, hostilities have stopped in Luhansk. Now we've got the hardliners in Donetsk, and let's see, but my gut feeling is all will be quiet on the Eastern Front, to coin a phrase from the First World War. Let's hope so, and I pray to God that is the case. I look forward to talking to you again, but I will leave you with what I always say at the end of anything here, and I really sincerely mean it. Slava Ukraine! Glory to Ukraine and to the armed forces. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.